All right. I think we can get started. One sec. Let me do this. This is a nice beat, but I'm gonna lower it down a little bit. All right. Is it gonna be any lower to me? No, it's just gonna be lower to y'all. All right. Well, hold on. Guess I just gotta lower it down for me too. Let's see how that sounds on stream. That's probably where it needs to be. All right. This shouldn't take too long. It's me. I'm here, and my screen. Let's quickly swap to the main event, and almost hit the wrong one. There we go. Full screen it. Welcome to Twitching with Tristenkw5 on this fine evening. Down to the wire live stream of votes for tomorrow's Game Awards. I think that this is the closest I let it come down to the wire in terms of. I think the voting ends tonight because tomorrow is the actual awards. It may actually go until tomorrow. They might let you vote until like midday tomorrow, and then that's when there might be a cutoff during the day. But still, I also just said this is like the first day this week. I had nothing going on in the evening, so it just kind of worked out that way. But yeah. Plus, that gave me more time to play stuff. Although I've pretty much been done playing most of the stuff we'll be looking at and voting on today for like the last week or so. The only thing I'm still working on is that's nominated for anything is Dave the Diver, and I think I know how I feel about that game at this point, which is a positive thing to say, but I'm not done with it. But I don't think I need to finish it before I vote on it. Anyway, let's get started. There's a lot of votes. There's a lot of nominations this year. Yeah, let's see we have all these categories to go through. I should go from the bottom up because the good one is the game of the year, and all these are the ones that nobody cares about because they're the best esports. So we can just rush through those. Or they're all the esports categories, and then the content. Yeah, this is our first real category. So let's knock these out real quick, and then we'll make these decisions. Now, so I'm gonna kind of talk over these while I go through them. They should do this option because now I have to vote and then hit previous in order to go backwards instead of being able to just vote and let it take me to like the next page. I bet I'm gonna vote and it's gonna be like you're all done or whatever. Anyway, now these, as always, these awards are not necessarily indicative of how I felt about games throughout the year entirely. I'm only picking from like a list of nominees that they provide in this situation. I always do my own top 10 of the year at the end of the year, either late December, early January, depending on how things are going, because I usually have to wait to watch anime all the way up until the end of the year. I'm going to vote for EVO as best esports event because EVO's the only one I care about. And so come January, probably early January, I'll do top 10 games and top 10 anime, and then top whatever else I feel like doing. There's usually a third smattering of things I just want to mention from the year. Top best esports coach. I'm going to make this decision solely on the nickname. We have Potter, we have Zonic, we have Gunba, we have and we have Home. I am gonna go with. I kind of like saying Gunba. Zonic is kind of fun, but he doesn't look. I mean, I'm supposed to be only going off the name, but he doesn't look like a Zonic to me. He doesn't fit his own name. I enjoy the randomness of but it's almost too random. If I can't pronounce it, that's a head against you. And Home almost looks like Homie. Points for that, but since you are not Homie, you're just Home. That's no fun. That might not even be a nickname. I might just be being racist, and that's like his actual middle name. But they put it in quotes, so I'm assuming. I can't vote for Potter. This is a diversity-focused channel, and that's too close. I'm gonna do Gunba. by default. I hope he's a good coach. Plus, it's Overwatch, kind of the last out of coincidentally, that's the only game out of all of these in esports that I would even care about, the littlest, and so it worked out. Best esports team: Evil Geniuses from Valorant, Fnatic from Valorant, Gaiman Gladiators from Dota 2, JD Gaming from League of Legends, and Team Vitality from Counter Strike. There's not much for me to go off of. Maybe I'll go off of outfits, in which case Fnatic definitely has it for me with these fiery looking outfits. I like fiery colors. In fact, all the rest of these in this row are all blues and blacks, which is very boring, and a little bit of splash of yellow almost. These are guys at least don't have like the yellow. And then these guys are also like yellow and black, but they're almost like their outfits are like almost too much. I'm gonna go with Fnatic's. Congrats, Valorant team. See, the next category, I would be able to just tap here in order to go to the next category, but I have to do fucking previous. Best esports athlete. There's no fighting game players this year. Kind of telling. I know Tristenkw5 won this a couple years ago. I don't think he won it last year too, but no fighting game players, which is a little bit of a shame. And it's almost all shooters except for League of Legends. The rest of these are both the League of Legends players. I guess that's just like the only domain of esports anymore. If you're not a fighting game, then you're a shooting game. Also, no Fortnite players, which is fine. But I was just like, all right. I'm not gonna go off of nicknames this time. That seems not fun. Does anybody ever vote for Apex Legends athletes? I never hear anybody talk about Apex Legends esports, so I'm gonna give it to the only Apex Legends esports representative I've seen so far, just to give them a shot to be represented for once. Next, best esports game. I mean, these are all returning. None of these are like new this year, except for possibly Counter-Strike 2, but I think Counter-Strike 2 came out last year. All the rest of these are old, so I really don't care about this category. I might give it to League of Legends because they've added some cool-looking new characters. That's the only thing I'm aware of. Sounds like Dota 2 is kind of like on the wane. People aren't as big on Dota 2 anymore. Although Counter-Strike 2 has also made some really big changes. I just don't know if it came out this year or not. It would give it a boost. I would vote for it automatically if it came out this year. And I think it's the, you know what? It's the newest game out of all these, so I think I'm just going to give it to it. If you look at some Counter-Strike 2 videos about their smoke tech, it's really crazy. It's the best smoke in video games. Especially because it's like gameplay relevant. It's not just for looks. It's really fucking cool. I don't know why I keep looking at the chat when I should be looking at the camera if I'm going to be talking to you guys. Anyway, I'm voting for Counter-Strike 2 for best smoke. Alright, we're out of the esports categories, but we do get into the content creator of the year. I don't know any of these, except I know these two. I feel like Spreen was nominated before. That name sounds familiar to me as being kind of dumb. Quackity, I haven't heard of, I don't think. Cypher PK. I was going to give them shit for making their name hard to say, but I think if you just had a space there, Cypher PK isn't actually all that hard to say. But also, I've never heard of him. People Make Games is a YouTube channel that's been putting out really good content this year and is going to get my vote. I've heard of Iron Mouse. I've watched some Iron Mouse clips. She's one of the last few big VTubers after that kind of came and went in terms of popularity. Like, they're still around, obviously, but the peak is gone and over with. But she's still doing it big. But I'm going to give it to People Make Games. They're doing really good work on that channel, and they need to be shouted out for it in terms of like stuff going on in the industry and backstage, not backstage, but like, you know, stuff that you don't get to hear about that's going on. I guess the biggest example would be like they did like a really big expose on monetization in Roblox. There we go, Roblox. I haven't said it in forever. Roblox is really fucking bad. And they showed how badly it's taking advantage of kids. On to the next. All right, now we're getting into the games categories. I thought this was going to be easy for me, but now I'm a little bit split. We've got Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, the next in the remake series for Final Fantasy VII, Hades 2, which is a guaranteed banger, Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth, which is a personal. This whole list is really good, which is a personal love of mine. Star Wars Outlaws, which looks okay. I'm not sold on it being that great, or at least I'm not sold on it just from the videos they've shown, but it has the potential to be pretty good. And then Tekken 8, which is obviously just more Tekken. It looks very good, but I'm a little bit less excited about it after a year where Street Fighter 6 happened, and that kind of captured all my excitement for fighting. Although I'm still looking forward to Tekken 8. Um, but I feel like I'm more excited to play as a specific character than I am more excited to play the game in general. That may change after it comes out and I actually get hands on it, but that has messed with my anticipation for it, so it's not going to get my vote. I have to make hard cuts. Um, Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth, I'm looking forward to. I love Like a Dragon now, or I just say now just because it used to be called Yakuza. Um, but also the type of game that Infinite Wealth is going to be, I'm not as excited about, even though I still enjoy it. It's part of the turn-based side of the series, so I like that. Okay, but I don't like it as much as like a classic beat 'em up kind of Like a Dragon game at this point. I think we'll see. But I'm gonna cut it for that. But it's my personal love. I hope it still gets some shout outs. I may vote for it just because this is the only category that it's gonna pop up in. It's not gonna win anything next year, most likely. Meanwhile, both of these are gonna get awards next year. Any of the other games on this list are almost guaranteed to get awards next year if they come out next year anyway. But I don't know if Like a Dragon's gonna make the cut. So this might be my only time to be able to give it any love. It'll get my hey, this game matters vote. So I'm gonna actually vote for it. But if that wasn't a factor, if it was my personal like I'm really excited to play this, all else being equal, I'd probably give it to Hades 2 out of all these actually. I mean, I love Tekken, but Hades is such a good game, and there's a lot of new stuff that could happen in Hades 2. Meanwhile, I know everything they're doing with Tekken 8 at this point, so there's less for me to anticipate. But I'm excited to see the new stuff they do with Hades 2. I don't even know if this is slated for next year, so it would be kind of lame if this is like a game that comes out 2 years from now and is showing up on this year's list. But I mean, like, that's fair. So either way, Hades 2 is probably my actual pick, but I'm gonna give my love vote to Like a Dragon. More people should know about those games. Best adaptation. All right, well, hey, convenient. The one that I'm not gonna vote for, Twisted Metal. Not that I watched it, but I heard it's just to get it out of the way. I've heard that it's one of those things where you like it. You could like it, but not in a man, this is so good way. It's more of just like it was fun, or less than that kind of way. Like, it was fine. I had a decent time. Like, I think that's the general vibe I get off of this production. But I know some people who are looking forward to another season of it. But that's all. I watched the trailer for it, and I really hated the trailer. But I think I heard that the trailer was like really bad at representing what that show was. But also, I don't like that they cut off this picture for the show with cutting off Mackie's head. Like, you couldn't lower it down a little bit? Did you feel like you need to center the Twisted Metal part? Because I get that a little bit, but even if you lowered it that much, I mean, he'd still be anyway. So here's our actual list up here. I didn't see the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Part of me was going to just to get it out of the way, but Sonic falls into that category for me, and I never saw that either. But I know that they are fine. The thing I heard about the Super Mario Bros. Movie was, it did well with audiences, but most anybody who plays video games just kind of saw it as like a big bunch of references, which was fine, but otherwise it's just like a movie. It's not that great. So it's not going to get my vote, and that's kind of what led to me not taking the time to sit down and watch it. Gran Turismo is going to be a no. It's probably fine. I've heard it didn't get horrible reviews, but it also just didn't do anything special either. I think it was just solid. It was like a 7 out of 10 kind of movie, and if you're into Gran Turismo, then it's funner-ish, but otherwise, nothing to write home about. So the real decision that has to be made is if I'm going to give it to Castlevania Nocturne or The Last of Us live-action adaptation. And neither of these are a shoe-in. Both of them have caveats, but they're both the best on this list. Um, Castlevania is another great season of a great animated show that does a great job adapting the video game source material without being a slave to it. But it does. This season also feels like a down season. Like this whole season kind of almost feels like a prep season for the next one, which is gonna be like a banger. It's gonna be like a knock your socks off kind of thing. The Last of Us adaptation was pretty solid all around. Um, I was down on the idea. I still don't love the idea of, hey, let's just take all these cutscenes in this game and redo it with like real people. I don't love that idea. Um, they did more than that. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. Um, but they did make it into its own thing overall, I believe, that stands beside the original source material. I think I'm going to give it to The Last of Us for that because it had a out of the two projects, it had a harder job to do. Plus, it's the newest, or it's the newer of the two. Castlevania is a sequel to something that's already been doing pretty good. The Last of Us is kind of like the first shot at this idea, especially with like HBO or whatever, a big time video game adaptation production that managed to stick the landing. I'm going to give it to The Last of Us. Up next, best multiplayer. Okay. Excuse me. Um, let me turn up my music a little bit while I'm thinking. So, Baldur's Gate 3 is co-op. Diablo 4, I think, is only co-op. Party Animals is like fun party competition, silly physics game. Street Fighter 6 is a fighting game, the fighting game of the year. And Super Mario Brothers Wonder has a really unique online and local multiplayer, but the online multiplayer is almost probably like a better experience overall, um, which is saying something for anything Nintendo related, let alone a Mario game. They did this really cool, almost Dark Soulsian kind of multiplayer where when you start a level on your own, if you're online, then you'll just see other players in the background who are also playing that level, and you can interact with each other and help each other. Well, interact mostly by just like assisting each other and helping each other and showing people where stuff is, and that is surprisingly cool, along with a lot of other smaller online only tidbits that I think really make that game better. Like it's one of those things where if somebody says they're going to turn off the online stuff, I would say I would advise them not to. Whereas when I started, I think I did by default turn it off, and I was like, well, let me turn it back on just to because I thought it was going to be laggy. That's the main thing. Is I tried it at first and it felt like it was going to be laggy, so I turned it off. But then I turned it back on and it was actually fine. I think it was just like the beginning of the level when people can be popping in. Anyway, this is a strong candidate. I'm not voting for Diablo. Fuck Diablo for monetary reasons, and also even besides that, it's not that great of a game. Even if you're looking for like a Diablo type experience, there's other games that are doing it better than Diablo 4 at this point. Plus, they took out any class that I want to play. Like that, it's just not for me. So Diablo's not getting any votes from me for this entire thing. Party Animals, I haven't seen almost any of, but it kind of just seems like the sequel to Gang Beasts, uh, just with probably like better graphics and a more variety of like game modes. It's not made by the same company, but it's like the spiritual. So I should say it's like the spiritual successor to Gang Beasts, which fine, whatever. But as somebody who doesn't play those kind of games that much anymore, I can't really speak to it, and I don't really care. Baldur's Gate 3 co-op, does a lot of great things with what could be a strictly single-player RPG, like letting players come in and play with you and weave their story into yours pretty smoothly is really impressive on top of everything else that is impressive about Baldur's Gate 3. That much, even though I don't love Baldur's Gate 3, or it may not be my type of game, or it's not going to be like on my top 10, but I still have a hell of a lot of respect for it, and I realize how much work went into making the co-op as good as it is. So that is definitely a contender. And then I just love Street Fighter 6. I love the online. I love the multiplayer. It's very smooth. The rollback netcode is as good as it gets. and that game is a lot of fun to play. But I don't think it's doing anything. It's hitting all the notes correctly that a fighting game just needs to hit, but it's not doing anything special on top of that. So although Street Fighter 6 is going to get some votes later on, I'm actually not going to give it best multiplayer. It's doing the it's doing the fighting game thing of doing really good one-on-one matches. It has a bunch of other modes that nobody plays as usual, or not even a bunch. It has a few other modes or ways to play that nobody ever plays, like team battle and extreme battle. I'm happy that stuff is there. I would like to play more of that stuff, but that's not how fighting game players go. So it's not going to get the votes for those extras. Um, so then it comes down to Baldur's Gate 3 or Super Mario Bros. Wonder, and I'm just going to make it easy on myself and give the nudge to Super Mario Bros. Wonder because that's the one that I played, I had fun with, I interacted with, I did the multiplayer. Baldur's Gate 3, I was supposed to do the multiplayer, didn't. Played it on my own. Still recognize how big of an achievement it is, but for me, I'm going to give it to Super Mario Brothers. And I wouldn't be surprised. I haven't been doing predictions for the overall winners yet because these categories have still been kind of like obtuse. But if I start doing some predictions, I think it's going to come down between Baldur's Gate 3 or Mario 2. Like, I think even in general, one of those two are going to win. And with the way that this year is going, I think Baldur's Gate is going to take most of its nominations because a lot of people like Baldur's Gate. Not that that's a bad thing, but I just think it's coming in with a heavy bias. But a lot of people did like Super Mario Brothers Wonder, but it has both recency bias working for it because Super Mario Brothers Wonder came out like I don't think that long ago. I think it came out like 2 months ago. So it's the more recent of the two games, so that's working for it. But also, I think that game kind of like comes and goes in the sphere, the talking sphere or the internet sphere. Like everybody talked about it for like the month it came out, and now it's been a little bit past that point where people kind of like cooled on it. It's not as hype. People aren't really talking about it, even though they really liked it. So I think it's going to get less votes. So I think Baldur's Gate is my prediction for the actual winner, but I'm voting for Super Mario. Best sports racing, man, nothing for me. I mean, technically, I wish I liked Hot Wheels Unleashed more. I bought the first one after like putting it off for so long last year, and then it didn't feel that great to me as far as an arcade racer. So I imagine I'd feel the same about the sequel. And then the rest of these are all like just the usual sports stuff. This is even harder than like the esports category. And I didn't even know a crew game came out this year to be honest. But I think I'm gonna give it to Forza Motorsport because I just like Forza in general, and it's the first motorsport they've done in a good long time. So that means it's probably pretty decent, probably pretty good if you're looking for that kind of game. Because they've been doing the Horizon games for a couple of years in a row, and just like letting motorsport go because Horizon's just so much better and sells better probably because it's a little bit less focused, specific on an audience. And I don't know enough about the Crew Motorfest to have like an opinion. I'm gonna give it to Forza Motorsport because yeah, and then this is probably just like another soccer game. I haven't heard anything about it being like especially better, and I don't know anything about F1 to know of how the general consensus is on how that is doing. So I'm gonna give it to Forza. I'm making myself vote even if I don't really care about the categories, which skews the result, yes, but not by much. Best sim strategy. I should have got myself a drink. Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp. I'm probably gonna end up voting for this. I can say right now because I love that they did this remake. Even if a lot of the people who love the first games don't really love the art style change that they've made, I don't mind it as much, but I get it. I kind of do wish they had like a mode that let you flip between the old graphics and the new graphics, or like a new up-resed pixel mode. Like it's still the pixel graphics, but do it in like a hot HD pixels that make it look really cool. And switch to like the cartoony, flash animation-y kind of like way forward, which is like the studio kind of style. Like flip between those two, like any other remake, or not any other, but a lot, like some other remakes do. I think that would have gone a long way to making people really like enjoy that game more and talk about it more. City Skylines 2, I really like Skylines 1. I'm sure Skylines 2 is just as good. Haven't played it. Company of Heroes 3, a really beloved series, Company of Heroes, but I know what kind of game it is. It's like a turn-based strategy, along the lines of like an XCOM, except it's just like in World War settings, I believe. And then Fire Emblem Engage, the newest Fire Emblem game. I never play these. Don't have anything against them in particular. I've played way back in the day on like the Game Boy Advance versions, but I've never played like a recent Fire Emblem that's in like 3D and stuff. But I'm sure they're still good. They're tactical battle games. And then Pinkman 4, which I really should have played. I've heard so much good shit about Pinkman 4 this year from not from general circles, not from just like general audiences and just in like online, but just like from every outlet I follow with like dedicated video game people. They all really are really in love with Pinkman 4 in a way that I haven't heard about any of the other Pinkman. Like all the Pinkman games are considered good games, but Pinkman 4 excited people this year. They're putting it really high up on their top 10. I didn't get around to it because Nintendo makes it hard as shit to play their games as opposed to everybody else who has like Game Pass and PlayStation Plus, and you know, I have my tricks and discounts I can use to kind of like play big games, and it just always hurts. It hurts the most to pay full price for Nintendo games, even though that's the only way you're ever going to get them, just because they're on a system that I barely play, a Switch. Even though I like the Switch, it's on a system I barely play, and uh, I know I'm only going to play through it once, also, and that makes it feel bad to kind of put that much money into like a game. And even if that goes for games on the other systems too, it just feels worse for me in Nintendo systems. So I'm still gonna play Pinkman 4 probably before the end of the year. I'll probably get it before the end of the month, probably, but we'll see. But I'm gonna vote for Advance Wars regardless. I want people to love Advance Wars. I want to play more people in Advance Wars. Not gonna happen. This game's not gonna set the world on fire, but I'm still gonna vote for it. Let's keep it moving. We're 1/3 of the way done. Best family game. Don't feel super strongly about this. Disney Illusion Island looks like a cool version of one of those games, or it looks like a cool platformer. I like the art style, and for the little bit I've seen of that game, it seems pretty good. Party Animals we talked about, Pikmin 4 we talked about. Sonic Superstars seems like it came and went, and absolutely nobody talked about it. Didn't get great reviews. Seems like a little bit, seems to keep that Sonic tradition of good enough for Sonic fans, maybe. So like a 5 or 6 out of 10 kind of game is the rough understanding I have of how that game came and went. And plus that it's coming out on the same year as fucking Super Mario Brothers Wonder, which does everything it does just better. So I'm giving it to Super Mario Brothers Wonder. I haven't done predictions. I think Best Sim is going to go to Fire Emblem. That's just Fire Emblem fans just tend to be really passionate compared to I feel like the rest of these fan bases. So I feel like is gonna get a lot of votes from just like passionate folks. I feel like the other people who like these games are like players who really enjoy them, but aren't going to yell to the sky to tell everybody else to like play them or whatever. So they're not gonna. I just don't think that they're gonna get that kind of recognition for that reason alone. Even though like the it's not about just players that feel that way. I feel like it's also kind of like even like reviewers and critics kind of lean that way. And then I think Super Mario Brothers has an easy win in this category for Best Family. I don't think there's anything else on here. I don't know. I just don't know how the general votes are going to go for Pinkman 4 from critics, but I don't think it's going to be enough to knock Super Mario Bros. Wonder off. I think it's going to win most categories they're both in. Best fighting game is going to be Street Fighter 6. We won't move off this page, but I'm just going to save everybody time. It's Street Fighter 6. We have Pretenders to the Throne. Oh, that's not nice to say. This year hasn't been like chock full of fighting games. So really, we have 2 main fighting games, and then a game sequel that was better than it probably had to be, and or the actual complete first product that just is coming out now as number 2, and then some indie titles that I completely respect, but I played a demo of God of Rock and immediately didn't like it, which is a shame because it is like a fighting game that incorporates rhythm elements, and I really like rhythm elements in my video games, and I did not like it. Pocket Bravery I didn't play, but I've seen it. I know what kind of game it is. It's a pretty straightforward indie fighter, to my knowledge. Seems fine. Um, Nickelodeon All Star Brawl 2 is a Smash-like with Nintendo. I mean Nickelodeon characters. Fine. I hear good things about it. I've heard it's done a lot of things better than the first one, but not enough to make it Smash. Like, I'm not gonna put money into that, and I don't really want to play it. But it's fine. So it really comes down to Mortal Kombat 1 versus Street Fighter 6. Mortal Kombat 1, I like the idea of the story where they were doing like a soft reboot, or pretty much. Like that idea. It looked okay. It looks how Mortal Kombat looks, where the graphics are very good, but the animation fucking sucks. Their fighting animation has always been bad, and they keep it bad because that's just what Mortal Kombat looks like now. But man, yeah, I just get tired of seeing it. And then the gameplay changes they've made to add assists in the form of cameo characters, I'm not on board with. It's not my kind of gameplay. So Mortal Kombat already wasn't my kind of gameplay, but I could at least play it and enjoy some of the characters. But now with the addition of cameos, I'm just looking at DLC characters. Almost there's like one or two MK characters I'd be willing to to put some time into in this one. They took out my old main, which I understand because she wasn't fucking popular at all. But and there's like two characters that they brought back from Mortal Kombat that I'd be like, yeah, I'd play like Kenshi, and Ermac. And the DLC characters are real fucking tempting, but not enough to get me to buy a whole game that otherwise I'm not into. Anyway, yeah, Street Fighter 6. I'm not going to explain why Street Fighter 6 is the best fighting game this year. It looks the best. It is the most surprising. Street Fighter has never been better. I don't feel like I'm going to talk more about Street Fighter 6 in my top 10 list because I'm going to have to figure out where it goes. But just know, yeah, of course, Street Fighter 6. And that's saying a lot from me, from somebody who normally doesn't like Street Fighter games all that much. Best RPG. Okay, man, we're only 13 in. Baldur's Gate 3, talked about it. Final Fantasy 16, played a significant demo for like an hour or two. Liked what I played, actually. I heard the story kind of gets melodramatic and isn't great, which is not great to hear for a Final Fantasy game. And also, this is like this is the mainline Final Fantasy game that is really starting to get away from anything that makes it a mainline Final Fantasy game in terms of like the turn-based stuff is almost pretty much all the way gone, and Final Fantasy fans are starting to feel some kind of way about that. But on the other hand, that means that I'm kind of a little bit more interested in playing them now. They play a little bit more like diet Devil May Cry games, which is fine, and I enjoy them okay. I would have played it if I had more time and honestly money this year, probably, but it may end up being an early year game for me next year, or if I have a chance to get it like on sale or something at a deep discount, I might play it, but I know it's good. Lies of P, I just kind of played. I wrapped up, I think, early last week. I think like Monday or Tuesday I finished Lies of P. I wasn't exactly planning to go out of my way to play it, but then it showed up on Game Pass, and Game Pass popped up for $1, so I was like, yeah, I'll play Lies of P for $1, and then I did. I was pretty hooked to it. Hooked. I guess hooked to it is the way you would say that. Anyway, it hooked me, and I played it pretty fast. I played, I think, 30 hours to finish it. It's not perfect, but it's really good for a Souls-like. It has issues, but I still think it's really good on this list. Oh, well, but not on this list of best RPG. It was a little bit controversial for it to be on this list for what it is, and I agree, but also genres are weird and tough. I'm not eliminating it from the vote because of that, but it is less of an RPG than some other things on this list that I think should get it. Sea of Stars, I heard good things about. It's like I heard it compared to Chrono Trigger, a modern Chrono Trigger, but at the same time, I just talked to somebody last night who played it, and they were like, I actually wanted it to have more Chrono Trigger. It was slower than Chrono Trigger, which is a thing that I definitely wouldn't like, is what that person told me just last night. So hearing that makes me a little bit less, like, it looks really good, it's very pretty, and it seems like it's decent, or it seems like it's solid, but it doesn't seem like it's blowing anybody's socks off. And then Starfield is the haha game of the year. This is the biggest, like, this people were so excited for Starfield and are still so excited for Starfield, but at this point, it's feeling like it's a big batch of cope. Like, it is like people are like, yes, you gave me exactly what I wanted in a Bethesda game, and it turns out players don't fucking know what they want. So yes, good job, Bethesda. You made the game that we said we wanted, and it turns out that game is boring and is filled with nothing but menus and fast traveling to do the same thing over and over again. I haven't played it myself, but I could tell from looking at it, and it's the same reason why I'm not in love with Bethesda games in general. Although at least I had fun with Fallout from time to time, but like Skyrim is not my thing, but I respect Skyrim at least. But Starfield kind of felt like this is just what we have to do now. This is the last thing for Bethesda to do is take Skyrim / Fallout and put it in outer space, like obviously, and then just do it on like a really big scale. And guess what? It just feels like really watered down and meh. Yeah, it's not even in the running for either critics or general audiences. Well, general audiences, Bethesda always has their fans that are going to act like it's still like, no, it's not that bad. It's still really good. The glitches are on purpose. The glitches are charming, and you can get over like the fast travel, and they'll just make so many concessions just to act like that this game is still matters. But I'm not here to just like fucking shit on it. I know it's not a bad game. It is definitely a good-looking, well-made game. It just turns out that giving players what they think they want, game designers should do a better job of giving players what they need. In the chat, yeah, I'm betting Baldur's wins best RPG from this list. No, it's easy. I talked about it last for a reason. It's gonna, not only am I gonna vote for it, it's gonna win this category easiest, for obvious reasons. It is the RPG game. It is like the game that is making one of the earliest forms of RPG into a modern day game while being a original RPG. It's gonna win. But shout outs to the rest of this list. Moving on. Best action adventure. We're getting into the nitty gritty now. I'm gonna have to start making some real hard decisions. Alan Wake 2. I'll go into more detail on when we get to categories I feel like are more relevant to what Alan Wake 2 is. I don't love it in the action adventure category, or genre, but I get why it's there. It's the only game that I dropped off of. It's the only big AAA game that I dropped off of this year, about a month ago, probably. I got like 5 or 6 hours into it, it feels like, and I was just like, nah, not for me. I see what this game is doing, but it's frustrating me to a point where I'm not into it. But also, it's not in contention for this list, so we're not going to go into detail on it, but just know it's not going to be getting any votes from me tonight, probably. And I think that people, although it's nominated super high, people were super high on it when it first came out. They were really amazed. It's getting super high reviews. But now there's some people who are finishing it just now, and then they're just like, actually, blah, 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 blah. And they're having a little bit more come to Jesus moment on Alan Wake 2. So we'll see how that affects votes. Although I think the votes by critics have already been in, and then the player votes are the only one that are up to the minute. But I don't know that for sure. Marvel Spider-Man 2, surprisingly good, and I say that as in I knew Spider-Man 2 was going to be a good game because the other two games in the series, the other game and a half, Spider-Man 1 and Miles Morales, are both very good games. But I didn't expect Spider-Man 2 to be that much better than it actually is, and that's the thing that got me to play it. I was actually going to skip Spider-Man 2 and just be all like, I know it's good, I don't need to play it. But I heard such good reviews about people being like, it may be on Game of the Year lists. And I was like, well, that is surprisingly better. So I played it. I agree. I think that game simplifies a lot of things. The storytelling stays good. This fast loading is amazing. And the changes they made to mobility really make that game feel even better than it did before in some important ways. I think it's a really great action game. But it is doing something that is pretty rote. It is doing the Spider-Man thing again. It is doing the Spider-Man thing again. It's just doing it better than I expected him to. So we'll see how that affects my vote. The Resident Evil 4 remake is amazing. Nobody thought they should do a remake of Resident Evil 4. Nobody thought that they could do it any better. You're touching one of the best games of all time. and doing a remake to a game that doesn't really need it. The original game is still there, very playable, very available. They remake it and port it to every single system for a reason. It is the silent Skyrim. Nobody talks about Resident Evil 4 in the same breath of like everybody makes fun of how Skyrim's on everything, how Doom's on everything. Resident Evil 4 is also kind of on everything for a reason. So when they made their remake and it was fantastic, I went in skeptical. I went in and playing that game and I was like, "What? My knife is gonna break. I'm gonna parry, but it's not exactly a parry." And this shooting feels different. I'm shooting people and they're not. My bullets aren't having the effect that I expect. I'm like, But then when I played their version, the remakes version of Resident Evil 4, and how all the systems tied together, it is just as good as the first one. I think it is good in a different way to where it stands besides the first one. So I'm like, if you like Resident Evil 4 remake, still go back and play the original because it does some things different. It does enough different to be its own thing. But that said, it's probably going to win this category for me, but let's keep going. Jedi Survivor is the game of the year that everybody was like, wow, this is really good, and then they quit playing it. And then just now, I hear people coming back around to try to finish it before the end of the year, and they're like, oh yeah, this is actually still really good. But I didn't get it in time. I wasn't going to spend full price on it. I didn't play the first one that much. I played a demo of the first one, and I didn't love it. I hear this one's way better. And it's less of a Dark Souls now and more of a 3D platformer is like the little bit that I'm hearing about it, which is interesting. And I've seen some gameplay in it that looked really promising to me, but it wasn't enough to get me to shell out to spend money on it. So I'm not voting for it. Moving on, Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom. This is another one that's a little bit weird. I guess this is the best category for it to fit in. It's not an RPG. It's more of an RPG than Lies of P, maybe. Maybe. That's a conversation all on its own. But action, as far as action adventure, yeah, sure. Obviously, it's Zelda. Fine. I didn't play it. I skipped it. I kind of thought I would play it. I respect the first one. I like the first one a lot. Everything they added to this one seems like it made it like way better. But it wasn't enough to make me be all like, oh yeah, I definitely got to play this. Like I saw enough of it and I was like, I get it. You build stuff in a really great, a game that was already really great. Now you can actually like build contraptions and do crazy like player-made situations. That's cool. That's awesome. I respect it. It's not my game of the year as far as this category. My vote is going to Resident Evil 4. The prediction, I think, is going to have to go to Zelda. I think Resident Evil 4 is going to get shafted this year. I think it's not going to get the respect because it's coming out in a year. As far as the popularity contest goes, Spider-Man 2 I think is already way bigger. And same, Legend of Zelda is a Zelda game. So I think Resident Evil 4 is going to get slept on a little bit. We'll see. Maybe the critics will see it for what it is. But I think the Legend of Zelda is going to take it, which I don't necessarily disagree with. I'm just saying. That's probably what it's going to come. That's my prediction. Best action game. We have Armored Core 6, Fires of Rubicon, Dead Island 2, Ghost Runner 2, Hi-Fi Rush, and Remnant 2. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about the bottom of the list. No Dead Island 2. No. I don't really want to talk about it that much. Dead Island 2 made like no splash. Nobody feels very strongly about Dead Island 2. I can't remember what time of the year it came out. It's been in like development hell, I feel like, for like a long time, where it got delayed multiple times and stuff like that. I might be making that up, but I don't feel like anybody was especially. There are definitely people who wanted a Dead Island 2, but I think it came out after what the other spin-off series from Dead Island was. I can't remember the name of it, but it's the other parkour first-person zombie stuff by, I think, the same studio, or else like the old studio that used to do Dead Island. I can't remember the name of it now, and I don't care. Either way, those games are fine. They're solid, but nobody's excited about them. Ghost Runner 2, I played a lot of the first Ghost Runner. I played a good chunk of the first Ghost Runner, so I know what kind of game that is. First person parkour, guns and swords, cool. But in theory, I should be way more excited about it. I haven't seen almost any of Ghost Runner 2. I haven't heard anything about Ghost Runner 2, and I haven't seen that much of it, even like in trailers or whatever. Doesn't look all that different from the first one. So I'm sure it just does whatever this in the first one, but maybe better, but not enough to kind of like break through. And then Remnant 2 sounds like a really awesome take. Remnant 1 was a lot of fun already. Remnant 2 seems like it sounds like what the Remnant series, the peak Remnant series. They figured out the things in Remnant 1 that were maybe not as great or they could improve, and it seems like Remnant 2 is the peak. Hey, we want to make a Dark Souls but with third person shooting and co-op focus in a co-op focus, and it sounds like Remnant 2 gets there. I've heard really great things about Remnant 2, haven't played it myself, but it seems really good to be on this list. Then we have Armored Core 6 and Hi-Fi Rush. These are my two picks, personal. My decision has to be which one am I going to pick over the other. As far as an action game, Armored Core 6 is a really great mech game by the people who bring you Dark Souls. It is fantastic. I have not played an Armored Core before. I have always been aware of the Armored Core series, and this one is great. I played through all three playthroughs in order to see everything. I had a great time the whole time for the most part. Didn't get to play any of the multiplayer, sadly. Never really worked for me, but I like it a lot. Hi-Fi Rush is a goddamn miracle. Hi-Fi Rush dropped the same day it was announced earlier this year in like January, February. I think January. It was like, hey, this game exists. This anime styled, cell shaded, music rhythm based action game, action like beat 'em up game exists and is out right now, and you can play it on Game Pass. So if you already have Game Pass, you can play this game right now for free. And on top of that, it's one of the best games of the year. One of the best games in the genre. I love that game a lot. The only reason I am hesitating to just automatically vote for Hi-Fi Rush, which I feel like is like going to be the dark horse vote for the year because it came out so early in the year, so people don't remember it as much. I don't know if there's any other categories that Armored Core is going to be nominated in, so this might be the only category I can give my love to for Armored Core. I know Hi-Fi Rush is also getting voted in at least two other categories, if not more. I know it's in the music category and it's in the indie category, I think. Maybe? But I don't know if there's any other categories Armored Core is going to be in. So I think I'm going to give my vote to Armored Core, even though my personal vote would be for Hi-Fi Rush probably, because I want Armored Core to get at least a win this year in something. It deserves it. It's a really fantastic game. And I think the overall winner, my prediction for the overall winner, is probably going to be Armored Core. I think that's where, because Hi-Fi Rush has the thing going against it where it's a very good game, but if you can't handle its music rhythm stuff, then you're probably not going to get along with that game. But I guess Armored Core kind of has that going against it too. If you're not into the mech stuff and you never really get a hold of get past this kind of difficulty, because it's not that hard, but it definitely needs you to figure some stuff out to make progress at times. And if you're not a player that's willing to do that, then you might not be into Armored Core either. My only like, it's a moonshot. I'm really just going off of like popularity and recency. So I'm gonna predict Armored Core is probably gonna win the whole category, but I'm not gonna be surprised if I'm wrong at all. I wouldn't even be surprised if any of the games that I kind of talked not great about wins this category. This is like a weird category this year, but I'm gonna give my prediction to Armored Core. Best VR AR. We have Gran Turismo 7, Horizon Call of the Mountain. I'm gonna note we have Gran Turismo 7's VR mode because it's a game that has a regular mode. Horizon Call of the Mountain, which is a VR game only. Humanity, which has a VR mode. Resident Evil Village VR mode. And then Synapse, which I have absolutely no idea what that is, and I am not voting for it. I have never heard of this before in my life. No idea. Gran Turismo 7 is a racing game with a VR mode. I'm sure it looks fantastic and pretty. Sure. Probably If you're gonna do that though, I need your virtual reality to actually do something else for it other than just putting me in the racing seat and making it look very pretty in VR. So I'm imagining that's all that it is in Gran Turismo. If it's more than that, I'm sorry, but it's not enough for me to vote for it. Call of the Mountain, I saw some videos of. It looks very pretty. It's probably one of the best looking VR games that you can get on like practically any headset that still looks very good, to my knowledge. Or it might just be, it may be exclusive to PSVR because that would make a lot of sense considering it's a Sony-made game. So it might be on PSVR only. But the little bit I saw of it, it's very pretty. Humanity you can play without VR, but it has a VR mode to my knowledge. I don't know if it improves the gameplay. Like I don't know if the controls on the VR with VR controls or make it any better. The little bit I played of Humanity, it seems cool. It didn't really excite me, but it seems cool. It seems like it's doing more than on the surface, and if I had put more time into it, I might feel differently. Um, Resident Evil Village is already a really good game. The VR mode, the VR modes they make for the Resident Evil games are always very impressive. So I already know that this is quality. I may just give it to that, even though it's kind of like rehashing a game that's already come out, but putting it in VR. But the VR modes for these games are always really impressive. For simplicity's sake, and because I know what it is and I know the most about it, I just don't know if Call of the Mountain does anything that I haven't heard anybody talk about it past release. I'm sure it's good, but I'm gonna give it to Resident Evil Village because I just know I have more idea of what that is. And as far as the prediction for who wins, it's either, I think because of the popularity, it's going to come down to Resident Evil or Gran Turismo. Maybe I just don't know enough about Call of the Mountain, but it wouldn't surprise me if that wins. I don't think it's going to go to Humanity or Synapse. It will probably be one of these two. I'd say probably even my if I had to pick one, probably Resident Evil, but I'm not surprised if I'm wrong. Best mobile game. Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis. I know a little bit about what that is. It seems to be like a prequel game in the style of, in the graphics of the remake. But they go into new story stuff. I think with Sephiroth and Cloud. I think in this, I wanted to play it, but I'm not in this money. But we'll see. I don't know enough about it. Hello Kitty Island Adventure. I actually played a significant amount of for reasons. Everybody, this game kind of popped up out of nowhere, and people were kind of like, it's what they wanted out of like a mobile Animal Crossing without the building as much. It's way more quest based. It's way more like doing favors to earn more stuff based, and more adventure based. It has a really big map to explore and find new stuff in. And I explored a lot of that map. I played probably like 6+ hours of Hello Kitty Island. I don't even know how much I played that game, but I probably played a good chunk of it. Not exactly because I wanted to, not exactly because the game was making me want to play it, but also it wasn't a bad game. It was pretty, for what it is, it's pretty fun. Honkai Star Rail came out this year. It's a Hoyo verse game, really fantastic anime graphics. This is a turn-based RPG. I don't know how their gacha system fits into a turn-based RPG, but I can guess. But turn-based RPGs always have like a high hill to climb with me, just because like I don't prefer turn-based when it comes to my RPGs. Plus, well, either way. So that's kind of where I fell on that. Monster Hunter Now. What if you did Pokemon Go, but it was Monster Hunter? I've been playing it ever since it came out in early November, I believe. Early November, maybe October. I think it's been out since then. I actually like it a decent amount. I kind of didn't at first. I kind of like was a little bit skeptical. I mean, I'm still playing it every day. I really like Monster Hunter, but it has some problems. I think I think this could be next year's mobile game of the year. I think after a year of updates and additions and DLC patches, more weapons, more everything, I think that game could be really great. Right now, it is just better than expected for its concept, but it's still not there yet. Terra Nil. I didn't even know this was a mobile game. Like, I know of Terra Nil. I know what this game is. It's a game about the opposite of a city builder, where instead of being a city builder where you're cutting down forest and then you're building up cities like SimCity style, you start out with an abandoned city and you have to use your resources to break things down and recycle them into resources you can then use to keep breaking stuff down to get rid of all, like, knock down all the buildings, get rid of all the concrete, replant the seeds, and then, make the rivers flow clean again. So it's like the opposite of a city builder where you have to break things down, but you still have to do it in a city builder kind of way. Good idea, cool idea. Not enough to get my vote. I'm not going to go into detail on it just because I can't speak to it. I've heard a little bit more, but it's not worth talking about too much deeper. So as far as my vote, also, I'm kind of talked too much about best mobile game of the year because I know my audience of 1 to 2 people at a time. I'm going to give it to Final Fantasy Ever Crisis. I think that this is a game that is also. I think this is a game that you can get on PlayStation and mobile. So it's really just like the mobile version of like what is essentially a full PlayStation game anyway, or a full console experience anyway, and that's enough to make me lean towards giving it the game. But my actual prediction is probably going to be Hello Kitty. This game actually was really made a big splash when it came out, even if it's a Hello Kitty game. So that sounds kind of like it sounds like a generic whatever mobile game for kids, but it managed to break through and get like some hype behind it when it came out online, and that's enough to get votes. But we'll see. That's my prediction. Wouldn't be surprised if I'm wrong. Best debut indie game. Tough category. Not tough, but we have Cocoon, Dredge, Pizza Tower, Venba, and Viewfinder. I've played these 3. I played a demo of Viewfinder. Fully finished both of these. Cocoon I only finished like last week as well. Happy I played it. Pizza Tower, I like the look of it, but not enough to like actually play it. But I'll probably end up playing it like early next year or the next time it's on like a big discount. I'll probably actually pick it up and play it. Venba is a very special game that conveys. It is a very like a game that's trying to talk about very societal level stuff of just like what's it like to be an immigrant living in like a different place, but that's communicated through cooking mini games, almost exclusively cooking mini games to my knowledge. Like cooking, I think traditionally Indian dishes. I could be completely wrong on that. It's like Indian or Filipino or something like that. I'm pretty sure it's Indian. So through the cooking games, it tells a story that a lot of people speak very highly of. It's not a super long game, but it gets its message across very well. Not going to get my vote. Haven't played it, but mentioning what it is because it's probably going to. It deserves to be here. Pizza Tower is like a platformer, an old school Wario style platformer, which is very rare. The Wario games as platformers are games that not a lot of people are aware of outside of like video game circles, but they're good games. They're just kind of like weird amalgamations of a little bit of Sonic, a little bit of puzzling, a little bit of everything. Like momentum is a thing, but also a lot of transformation, a lot of weird stretching and like. But then cross that gameplay with like the look and feel of like a Ren and Stimpy, dirty, weird, freaky, surreal kind of art style. And Pizza Tower is a lot of cool ideas and fun. I'm gonna play it eventually, but it didn't tip me over this year to actually try it. Viewfinder, I played the demo of. It's like a Portal style puzzle game where you go into a room. It has a really cool concept. You use that concept to solve its puzzles. You move on to the next room and repeat. There's a not great story on top of that, I hear, but the concept of we give you a camera that prints out Polaroids, and then you can point those Polaroid pictures anywhere in the world, and it will imprint onto the world and put that into the world where you're looking. So if you pick up a picture of a door and there's a wall in front of you, and you make that you put that picture of the door up to the wall, it'll force that door onto the real world, and then you can walk through that door and you use that to solve puzzles. Very cool idea. The way it's done is very good. But it's not gonna make the cut for me. I didn't end up playing the full game, and I think I heard it. It didn't stick the landing in terms of like quality of puzzles. I think it was solid, but not hella special. So it comes down to Cocoon and Dredge. Dredge is a fishing game. It's a really good, fun, weird fishing game that has a lot of Lovecraft influence. It's like if there's a day and night cycle. So if you're out fishing when the sun goes down, then you start losing sanity, and that affects your fishing, or that affects your sailing, because you start hallucinating and you start losing health and blah blah blah, and then you're catching fish that are like otherworldly and infected like with weird stuff, and it's a cool game that surprisingly all about just fishing. It's very cool. And then we have Cocoon, which is like in the same vein of puzzle game as Viewfinder, except it's a little bit more in like the um, inside or limbo style of puzzler. In fact, it is made by people who left those studios, to my knowledge. One of the initial people who made the Limbo game, Playdead Studios is the name of that studio. So Cocoon, in a word, or as short as possible, is like you play as this little bug guy, and you run around in a top-down world, but you pick up these orbs that have an entire world inside of them, and you can go into those orbs, and then you will find other orbs with other worlds inside of them, and you use them to solve puzzles, and you have to swap them around. So there's a lot of like hopping into one world to grab a thing, and then hopping back out, and then grabbing another world, swapping it, hopping into that world with the thing you grabbed in the other one, blah, blah, blah. It's hard to describe without showing video of it, but it moves super well. And the thing that I want to note about it is it's a rare puzzle game where it doesn't try to ramp up in difficulty. It doesn't try to go like, okay, you're starting out, things are super easy, we're teaching you the basics, now things are getting a little bit harder, and now our super tough puzzles are at the end that require you to use like everything and think really hard. Instead, it has this nice little curve of, hey, we're teaching you the basics, you got it? Okay, this is where we're at for the rest of the game. As in, the puzzle you play in hour 1 feels as difficult and rewarding to solve as the puzzle you beat in like hour 5 or 6, which is like around how long the game is. This is not a super long game. But my point is, they got the difficulty curve almost perfect to where every puzzle in the game feels about the same difficulty, which is that sweet spot of you see it, you see the puzzle, you have to think about it for a second, you figure it out, you can immediately solve it then. You can immediately do what you need to do to solve the puzzle. You don't have to overthink it. You're not stuck for too long ever. I got stuck maybe like once for a significant amount of time on a puzzle, and even then I eventually figured it out. But otherwise, almost every other puzzle I was like halfway through just like moving into the space. I had already done like half the thing I needed to do to solve the puzzle, and then it clicked. It's more like it clicked for me what the puzzle even was around the same time that I saw it. And then I was able to just do the thing because I was already halfway there anyway, because it's practically what I was kind of like naturally already doing. It's a very good feeling puzzle game. It's going to get my vote because of that. I like Dredge a lot, but Cocoon is really impressive, and I like any puzzle game that makes me feel smart without slowing me down, and I can recommend to a lot of people who aren't even into puzzle games. Cocoon is very good. It's going to get my vote. For best debut indie, my prediction would be maybe Cocoon. I don't know if enough people played Cocoon for it to get the spot, though. Dredge came out pretty early in the year, which is going to work both against it, but it also means that people had a longer time to have a chance to hear of it and play it. Pizza Tower, I know some people really, really love, but I think it's another case of a narrow, specific player base. I don't think it's very widespread love. Vemba is less gameplay focused and more story and presentation, and those kind of games don't generally do super well in categories like best debut. And Viewfinder didn't really make a splash. I think it did fine, but I didn't hear anybody talk about Viewfinder. I think people respect it, but I don't think it excited anybody, so I don't think it's going to get the vote. I think the winner is also going to be Cocoon, is my prediction. If I'm wrong, then my next guess would be Dredge, I guess. But that's a real rough guess. That's only a guess. All right, let's keep moving. Man, I didn't expect this to take as long, but that's how it goes every year, which is not a complaint. I need to get a drink. We're only up to 20, and we got 11 more categories, and they're like the toughest categories yet. But that's fine. Maybe after this category, just to celebrate. Well, maybe after category 21, we'll have 10 left. So, or when we get to 21, we'll have 10 left, and then I'll grab a drink. best independent game in general. So last category was best debut indie game, as in best new first time release indie game. Now this is just best overall, regardless of if you're a sequel or whatever. Best independent game. We have Cocoon again. We have Dave the Diver. We have Dredge. We have Sea of Stars. We have Viewfinder. We've seen all these games before up to this point, except for Dave the Diver. So let me start with that. I'm in the middle of playing Dave the Diver. I think I mentioned at the beginning of the stream, this is the one that I was late to. I am enjoying my time with Dave the Diver a whole lot. I think it's a very special game. It's a game where you play as a deep sea diver by day, hunting fish with a harpoon gun and amongst other things. And then the fish you bring back during the day get cooked in a sushi restaurant mini game at night. So it's a roguelike on top of that. So every day when you jump into the ocean, the layout and the fish that you run into are a little bit different. It's never like completely different, like some roguelikes. Like the general directions you need to head into in order to get to certain things stay overall the same, but the fish and the layout changes a little bit in between. And then but that game also just keeps expanding. So not only are you doing a sushi restaurant mini game where you're picking the menu and you're hiring staff and you're running around getting people their orders at night, but then on top of that, it expands to a little bit of not really a spoiler, but just like the game didn't really let you know too much of this, but you eventually get to the point where you have like you have a fish farm where you're growing fish during the day through finding eggs that you can then use towards the kitchen or towards sushi. And then you're going to have like a regular farm for like plants, so you can grow like stuff that you can't get otherwise, like rice and other like homegrown vegetables for your sushi. There's a lot to the game, and I'm not even getting to like the story spoilers or like the main plot spoilers. The characters are a lot of fun. There's a lot of different characters. The art style is a lot of fun. It looks like a 2D pixel art game, but it turns out to be like there's a whole lot of it's a fully 3D game that uses sprites to throw you off, and it's a lot of fun. The rest of these I've kind of talked about, and I don't think I have to re-talk about them in this new context of best independent game, other than to like say why I wouldn't pick them. Viewfinder I think is fine. Didn't blow my socks off. I didn't even play it. I should have played it, but even then I don't think it would have knocked anything else on this list off. Sea of Stars I didn't play at all. Heard good things about it, but not good enough to play. Don't think it would be my choice. It might win the category though, honestly, but I don't know enough about. I don't know. I can't make a really good strong prediction on that. Dredge. I really thought it's a really good game, but I don't think it's like. I think it's like an 8 out of 10 kind of game where it's really fucking good, but it is not. I don't see it as special. I don't feel that it's special, but I know that it is. Like it does something no other game does, really. Like it's a one-of-a-kind kind of game, and usually I'm way about rewarding that kind of game. But I feel like in my heart of hearts, I can't vote for it for this category, and I don't think it's going to win, but I wouldn't be surprised if it does. Cocoon, I like a whole lot. And I already talked about it just a little bit ago for best debut. And Dave the Diver, I just finished talking about too. So really, for my vote is going to come down between these two. I haven't finished Dave the Diver yet. I finished Cocoon. Dave the Diver just has so much more content. It has so much more to play. The other big controversy, though, is Dave the Diver technically isn't an independent game to some people because it's backed by a big AAA studio. But the developer is like a little standalone developer, but they get money and backing from a bigger AAA studio. So it's hard, and they also get funding from them. So it's hard for it to be an independent game or an indie game in the traditional sense, and that's caused a big controversy for what the exact definition of what indie even means in this context. So I'm trying to figure out where I stand on that, and I'm not going to go into my reasoning on it, but it will tip my vote somewhat. I think I'm not going to worry about it. I think I already gave Cocoon a vote for best debut indie on top of that. And I don't know if Dave the Diver is popping up in any other categories. And I think that it from even like I feel like I'm about halfway through Dave the Diver, maybe 2/3. I don't really know because I haven't looked up anything that might spoil me. But I put a lot of hours into Dave the Diver. I've made a lot of progress in what's going on. I don't know how much more there is. I feel like I'm just now unlocking some other stuff in Dave the Diver, which tells me I'm not close to the end yet. But either way, I already think this is going to be best indie game of the year. I think it's going to get. I think I'm going to speculate that it's going to win. It's going to be my prediction for to win the category. It's really good. I'll talk about it with friends more after I finish it, maybe. But just know that I think it's really good. Yeah, I don't think I have to. I think, and if it's not an indie game or if it gets a little bit of a cheat here by being having so much more money behind it, that's a fair argument to make. But also, at the end of the day, it's just let's just keep it. It's a good game, and we'll figure out the rest later. Best community support. All right, this one's a soft category. A little bit of a break from like the hard thinking I've had to do so far. To help with like the category definition, I'm going to read this one. Recognizing a game for outstanding community support, transparency, and responsiveness, inclusive of social media activity and game updates and patches. So that means that the developer or the publisher has been responsive on social media. They put out patches when the community is like, God, we really hate this. Please change it, and then they do change it. That's the general vibe. Like we're looking for like, hey, this developer went out of their way to listen to their player base and make changes accordingly and make fixes accordingly. Who did that the best? So we have Baldur's Gate 3, and the reason why it's nominated for this category, in case you don't know, is Baldur's Gate 3 has actually been out and playable for like a year or two in early access. So the game wasn't complete. The entire game was not there, but they had it playable in a similar way that they did with Hades, where you could play it like a year or two ago, but it was like an unfinished product. But you could still give back feedback while they were adding content and making changes all that time. And then it's just now that this year they put out the 1.0 complete edition. All the story is there. We finished the story. All of the maps are there. All the characters are there. Kind of a finished product. So that's why it's in the community support tab, because a lot of changes they made that it resulted in it being one of the best games of the year were based off of feedback from players in those early years, directly influencing the developers to make that game. They listened, they made changes. The game is one of the best games of the year. Cyberpunk 2077 came out. It was real trashy. Tons of really critical game-breaking bugs for a lot of people, not necessarily myself, but it also didn't look as good as it necessarily should have. It was graphically kind of buggy. It had a lot of issues with a lot of things. But then this year, they spent the entire last year working on the game, fixing bugs, patching it, adding content, and then they came out with an expansion pack this year, which on top of that brought out a patch that changed everything about how like the skill tree works and everything. And a lot of people felt like it just fixed like most of the things that were wrong with the original release, and like this is like what Cyberpunk 2077 should have been. But I can already tell you I'm not voting for it, because I'm not going to reward, hey, we put out a broken product to begin with, and then you guys helped us fix it, and or we did what we should have done and we worked to fix it after we put it out shitty. Like, I'm not going to reward that, even if it is an example of like not just giving up and moving on to the next project, which is commendable, but also meh. I'm just not going to reward that. Destiny 2. It's been around for years. They listen to the player base a lot. I even played a lot of Destiny 2 this year for like the first time. I think that was earlier this year that I played a good chunk of Destiny 2, at least for me, just because I got it for free during PS. I got one of the expansions for free during from PlayStation Plus. So I was like, I was in the mood for something kind of like grindy, and I had a decent time with it. But that game's been around for years, and I don't think I want to give it the vote, just because like I don't see it as doing anything more special this year for community support than it has done the entire time it's been out for like 4 or 5 years now. Final Fantasy 14, yeah, the MMO. This is the Final Fantasy MMO. Always on the list, always doing really great things with the player base. Again, this might be a situation where but not like this year, not like anything specific to this year. Enough's been said about Final Fantasy XIV's like miraculous comeback thanks to the players years and years ago. and it just keeps kind of trucking with that. Same thing with No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky is like kind of a miracle along the same lines of a Cyberpunk, except No Man's Sky didn't come out broken. It just came out and it didn't meet expectations that the lofty expectations that the developers and the marketing put out for what the game was before it came out. But again, that's like years ago now. That's like No Man's Sky is like 4 or 5 years old as well, and they just keep adding to that game for free in really huge, fantastic ways. They can keep going, but it's not a this year thing. This year is going to be one of these two. And I've already said Cyberpunk's not going to get a nod from me for fixing what was broke. So I'm going to give it to Baldur's Gate 3. Even though I don't feel that strongly about anything in this category anyway. But Baldur's Gate 3, another easy win for me. And I think it's going to be a pretty easy pick. I think it's going to come down between these two this year in terms of my prediction. I'm going to lean towards, I think Baldur's Gate 3 just has so much fucking passion and love behind it that it's probably going to win the category as well. But it wouldn't surprise me if Cyberpunk manages to pull it out. Best Ongoing is practically the same thing, man. Best Ongoing awarded to a game for outstanding development of ongoing content that evolves the player experience over time. Practically the same category, but this one isn't. This one's specifically game content, not fixes, patches, social media posts, social media engagement. It's specifically, hey, we put out a really good expansion, we put out a really good characters, we put out more and more levels, maps, that kind of thing. So we have Apex Legends, Cyberpunk 2077, Final Fantasy XIV, the MMO, Fortnite, and Genshin Impact. This is also the first year I actually played a whole lot of Genshin Impact, and I really had actually a really good time with it, but I eventually hit a wall. I hit a wall like 40 hours in, something like that. I played a hell of a lot of Genshin Impact, had a really good time with it. I played it in the past, fell off of it, and then this year I just was just like, man, let me try again. Let me just try again. I just feel like it, and I had a lot of fun with it. I only quit playing it probably 3 or 4 months ago. I think like towards the end of the summer, I was like, I'll finally let this kind of like chill. I got other stuff to play. But also, it's been around for too long for me to vote for it at this point. They do keep adding to it, very good. They add new characters, they add new, really huge chunks of the world, all very well made. But it's been around forever. Same thing for Fortnite, same thing for Final Fantasy XIV. These two are. Apex Legends is even also kind of there. Let me say what I'm not going to give it to Genshin Impact. I'm not going to give it to Final Fantasy. Fortnite is right on the cusp. And even though Fortnite falls into the same reasoning as those other two, Fortnite just makes such huge changes. And actually, the huge change is like I played Fortnite this year. I think this was the year they put in no build mode. And that's all they needed to do to get me to love Fortnite. Or to get me to be like real invested in Fortnite. And I think that was only this year. I don't think I was playing Fortnite last year. Maybe last year's when they put in no build mode. And if so, then they fucking tricked me. I should probably look it up. But no build mode, if that came out this year, changed the game enough for me to vote for Fortnite. Because now I really like Fortnite. I should probably look that up. But I mean, at the same time, none of the rest of these did anything else to like really excite me. Apex Legends keeps doing what it's doing pretty well, but it's not changing its game up. It's just adding more characters and, balance patches. Maps obviously keep coming, but nothing like life-changing. They add new modes, but I don't know enough about the stuff that they did this year compared to previous years to be like, yeah, this was a really exceptional year for Apex Legends, so I'm just not personally able to vote for it. And Cyberpunk's expansion, I never played the base game enough, and I didn't play any of Phantom Liberty, I think is the name of the expansion DLC. That I didn't play any of that, but I've heard decent stuff. But most of the good stuff I've heard about Cyberpunk this year came from the patch that came along with the DLC, not necessarily just the DLC itself. I don't think the DLC was the thing about Cyberpunk. I think it was just like the patch that fixed it. So I'm voting for Fortnite. It keeps adding significantly different stuff, not just keep adding improved stuff to an existing base. They keep just making new bases of Fortnite to play. And it's impressive. It's kind of obvious, but this is the year for me to be like, hey, I got into Fortnite this year. I don't know if it was last year or this year, but it's also, even if it was last year that I started playing it regularly, I still have a good time with Fortnite. So it's my pick. My prediction: Maybe Cyberpunk just because of recency bias. The DLC for it came out like 2 months ago. The rest of these are all really old games. So my prediction might just go to Cyberpunk because of that reason. Oh, okay. I thought this was vote number 21. But either way, prediction is Cyberpunk, but my vote goes to Fortnite. I also wouldn't be surprised if Fortnite just wins because it's popular. Ooh, we might be able to skip this category because I didn't play any of these. I wanted to play this one. Games for impact, to explain the category. For a thought-provoking game with a pro-social meaning or message, these are like, this is like your heart tugger. This is like your Oscar bait category. This is like we made a game about like a cancer patient. We spread a message that's popular. We made a game that's about some shit. Like we said something that really mattered to us is the category. Games being A Space for the Unbound, Chance of Sonar, Goodbye Volcano High, Chia, I think is how that's pronounced, Terra Nil, and Venba. You heard me talk about Venba. You heard me talk about Terra Nil, which Venba is obvious from how I described it. Terra Nil's message being about like loving the environment and nature and fighting back against climate change somewhat, I believe. Chia is a game that pays homage and really respects, I think, New Zealand culture? Like New Zealand Aborigine, or not Aborigine, but like native New Zealand culture or something in that direction. I forget the specific ethnicity, the specific culture that it is pulling from. But it is all about that culture, and it is. What if you could play Breath of the Wild, but instead of being Link, you were a little girl who could turn into any animal that you find on the entire island? Like that is the main like gameplay gimmick is you can just transform into any animal that you've run into. Heard good things about it. Goodbye Volcano High, I think, is mostly a visual novel about the dinosaurs while the meteor that was coming to kill them showed up. So like this is like about anthropomorphic dinosaurs in a high school while everybody knows that the meteor is on its way to blow up the Earth and kill everyone in their last days on Earth. I don't know too much about it since other than that, except for that base concept. I think it's a good concept. It's the fact that it's really, I think it's written in a way to where like the fact that they're dinosaurs is not the point. That's really just like an art style choice. It's really just like, hey, what if we were high schoolers and we all knew that shit was about to be over? What would that do? How would you deal with that, and what does that mean for you and your friends? I think that's the general vibe I got from like the trailer. I haven't heard anybody talk about it. I don't think it came out that long ago. Doesn't necessarily mean it's not good. I just don't know if it's going to make it in the category. Chance of Sonar is a really interesting kind of puzzle game about learning a language you don't know. Uh, the quick and dirty explanation is you wake up in a place that you have no knowledge of the language, and the whole game's gimmick is about learning that language and traveling through the world, using context clues and signs and imagery and iconography to figure out how the language works in terms of like, well, this means plural, and this symbol means this word or this concept, and solving puzzles that way until you eventually get to the point where like the end game is like you are running translation between two cultures to kind of test if you really have an understanding of the language. And I love that idea. I've heard nothing but good things about it. It's probably going to be my vote for this category. I didn't even play it. I wanted to. It's on my list to play. I'm probably going to play it before the end of the month. But I didn't get around to it in time for this stream. And then A Space for the Unbound, I honestly know nothing about. From the looks of this image and my idea of the little bit that I've run into on it, very little bit, I think it's a visual novel game as well. I could be wrong on that, but otherwise, my knowledge is going off of the name, the type of name it is, and what's going on in this image. And I feel like that's not fair to it to even try to tell you guys what I think it is, because it really doesn't matter. I'm not going to vote for it. It's not gonna be my prediction. I haven't heard anything about it. I don't think it's gonna get voted for. If it wins this category, it would really surprise me and suddenly make me look up what's this game is about, but I really don't think it's going to get there. I'm going to vote for Chance of Sonar, just because it's the one I know the most about and plan to play. Arguably, I know just as much about Terra Nil, to be honest, but and kind of Chia even. I actually know more about the games in this category a little bit more than I'm making it sound. But even then, it's the one that excites me the most and makes me want to play it. And I think as far as my prediction for what wins the category, I could see Chia winning. I think a lot of people played Chia earlier this year. So it's going to be a little bit of like a popularity contest situation where I think a lot of people played Chia and have things to have any kind of feeling on it is the thing versus the rest of these. But I'm voting for Chance of Sonar. Taking a quick break. I'm going to pop open a bottle of soda. Should only take a second. Let me rest my voice for a little bit. I've been talking pretty nonstop. And we're about to get into like the heavy duty categories-ish. We're getting towards the top of the list, which is usually where they pit like their, we've already been through some heavy duty categories. Either way, we're almost done. Hopefully this takes about another 30 minutes. I did not expect this to take 2 hours. I thought it would be more like an hour and a half max. Whatever. Not a complaint. Just kind of surprised. Give me 1 sec. Alright, I'm back. And I'm treating myself to some Dewberry soda. I have no idea how that's going to show up on the... I don't care enough. This is Dewberry soda. I didn't want just like a straight like Pepsi or something. I wanted something that's a little bit smoother to kind of like help keep my throat nice and... not just keep it from getting dry and scratchy. Dewberry soda is really smooth, so that's going to help. Let's keep trucking on. Innovation and accessibility. Here's a kind of like a light touch category. Is what it says on the tin. These are about games that that make it so easy for players who may be disabled or have limitations to be able to fully enjoy the game through like menu options and exclusive modes for like colorblind players and players with like limited mobility, that kind of thing. These are the games that had a lot of like innovations in that department. I'm not going to go over each one. I don't have enough knowledge about how each of these games did that. I might even skip this category. Because at least I can make a educated guess in some of the other categories that I really didn't know a whole lot about, like, or didn't care that much about. But this one I feel like would kind of be important to some people, and I don't want to like... My vote doesn't count for that much, but I just don't need to vote in this. It's not a judgment thing as much, since I just don't have enough knowledge in this, and I'm not disabled, so it's not even something that I can really have a say in. This is the only category I'm probably gonna skip, just because I feel like kind of weird just throwing away a vote into it. Best performance awarded to an individual for voiceover acting, motion, and or performance capture. We have Ben Starr, who played somebody in Final Fantasy 16. I wish they would have... Well, I guess Ben Starr must be the name of the character. Okay, no, that's the name of the actual person. I wish they would list the name of like the character they played, because I don't know who the fuck I guess I'm gonna assume he's the main guy from fucking Final Fantasy. I don't know. Cameron Monaghan? Cameron Monaghan? I don't know. But it looks like he's also the main character from the Jedi Survivor game. Idris Elba, the actor, who plays the main character in the DLC specifically for Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty, which I actually heard mixed things on his performance there, just because like it was a little bit weird. Just like the fact that he was like a star took away from the role or something. So far, I don't feel strongly about any of these. I didn't play any of these games. Melanie Libbard in Alan Wake 2. I think she probably played as Saga in Alan Wake 2. One of the two main characters you play as in that game. I might give it to her just because I think her performance in that game is probably pretty good. I really like that character, the character of Saga in that game for the little bit that I played, though. Um, let's finish it off, though. Neil Newbin or Newbon in Baldur's Gate 3. I'm making an educated guess. I could only guess the character that I think. I think that's Asterion, the white-haired rogue character. Uh, Cameron repping the gingers for us, yeah. He doesn't look all that ginger in this picture. And then Yuri Lowenthal, who plays Spider-Man in Spider-Man 2, Peter Parker Spider-Man. Good performance as always. At least I played that one. I mean, I played all of these three, and I played none of these three. I wish I knew for sure the voice that he played. That might actually put me over to vote for Baldur's Gate, but without that knowledge, and without finishing that game, story-wise, I'm not gonna vote for Baldur's Gate 3. I didn't put enough time in. And I mean, like the only of these games that I completely finished was Spider-Man 2. And I really like Peter Parker, like the voice that Yuri does for Peter Parker in this game. But I think he's had a couple years to win it. He hasn't, which is unfair to him. But I feel like we need more this in this space. We don't get I mean, we get women. I think the Lady Dimitrescu from Resident Evil 8 won it her year. We get women winning. It's not like, so it's not, that's not the thing, but you know, black women are pretty rare. So I mostly kind of want to use this vote to do something more, since I don't feel that strongly about any of these, to be honest. Maybe that's like a cop out, but I don't think that anything really stood out to me this year in terms of like performance. I think I think these are all really good performances from a little bit that I've seen them, but none of them stood out to me as like especially special, except kinda for Saga. And even then, there's a little bit of recency bias there, and there's a little bit of bias in general for just like seeing like a new character that's not really done very often well. I'm gonna give it to her. I'm just gonna do it just to kind of like end my suffering. I'm gonna go ahead and pick her. If I vote for or predict a winner, I'm gonna give it to the Baldur's Gate guy, because Baldur's Gate is just fucking gonna sweep this year, I feel like. Best audio design. Listen, I think this is the only other category I can give to Hi-Fi Rush. I think it's going to also be in the best music category. I'll probably give it to that. But again, they made a music rhythm based fighting system work well, and that takes really good audio design. You need really good sound cues. You need really good visual cues that match up to the sound. You need good music that feels good to fight to and play with. The jumping is based on the sound. The entire world bounces to the beat, like subtly, to help you keep track of it. Such a smart thing to do for a game that is so rhythm dependent. That's kind of like a visual design thing, but that plays in it is like distinctly tied into the audio. So I'm giving to that game because not only is it done well, but it is dependent. The gameplay is also dependent on the fact that the audio design is done well. The rest of these, sure, they're your usual big budget, well presented games that have good sounding, scary shit, which is why all three of these are here, because spooky, scary guns and bangs and creepy, goopy noises. That's all three of these games. And then Spider-Man is just like the really big budget superhero movie level production values. So yeah, it has really good sound too on top of everything, but it's not really enough to stand out. At least these three can like scare you or surprise you with their sound design. Marvel is just like, let's not fuck up the way that stuff sounds and make it sound good. And they did that. They're not doing anything special with their sound, which sounds meaner than I intended to, but it's not. It didn't stick out to me at all. I'm gonna end my misery. I'm voting for Hi-Fi Rush. If I had to predict, I'd say one of these two. Dead Space is well known, even though I kind of lumped them all together. Out of these three, I feel like Dead Space comes out ahead because it has some really distinctive sound that I think it's known for. It has some really bassy thumps because you're like in a big heavy spacesuit and you're stomping on shit and you really feel that stomp because of the bassy audio design. So I think that's going to get the nod, but it's also a remake of the first one. And I meant to play the remake, but this is a remake. So compare that to new stuff happening in Alan Wake 2 and both of these being remakes, and Alan Wake 2 might come out on top just because people are more enamored right now with the presentation in Alan Wake 2, and that is also includes the audio, even though I don't really think that the audio did anything that special either. But I think my prediction is gonna go to Alan Wake 2. Best score in music. We're gonna cut this short. I'm not a music guy. I don't know about music enough to talk about it. I just know that music is important to the gameplay of this, and I want it to win more shit. It is a completely rhythm-based game, so yeah, and its score well made for that. The rest of these I barely played enough to have a strong opinion, and even if I did, I don't remember any of the music from any of these to be honest, which means I probably shouldn't be voting for them. But I remember stuff from this one. So, prediction. This might be another Zelda shoe-in. It's Zelda people going up against Final Fantasy people. Final Fantasy orchestrated music is always really highly regarded, to my knowledge. Zelda is always Zelda. People always love fucking Zelda music. I haven't heard enough to really have a strong indication of which one's going to come out on top, but my gut is going to go with Zelda for a prediction. Best art direction, which is not best graphics. I think they have another category for best overall. Like I think it's best technical graphics or something like that. When we get to the category, you'll see it. But it's for like the game that's like looks most impressive overall. But this is art direction, which is a little bit more like which game has the best style visually overall. I think this might be another vote for me in Hi-Fi Rush. Here's my reasoning why. Alan Wake 2 is a sequel to Alan Wake 1, which looks very similar, but they just pumped it up to 11, or they just pumped up the graphics a lot in 2, and it does look pretty good, but also I don't really like the way the faces animate. It surprisingly looks a little bit... The facial animations surprisingly look a little bit cheap for a game that is very focused on drama and tense talking and conversation. So you spend a lot of time looking at faces, and the faces don't animate quite that great. I think they look fine, but they don't animate very strongly, and that's important to me. And otherwise, like the art direction of like the spooky presentation of like even when you see it in this image, like things overlapping each other and bright and color differences or stark color differences making you unsettled and flashing images, that kind of thing. Yes, it is honestly well done. It's just not exciting to me in this context. But we'll come back to it. Liza P. It looks nice. It looks like Bloodborne, a more modern Bloodborne. But otherwise, that's its look. Its look has been done before. It didn't impress me. I liked it. I think it's very good, but it didn't impress me with like anything new ideas, new looks, new art. Like it was like, yeah, no, we're doing this and we're doing it with our twist on the setting, but otherwise, not enough to win this category. Super Mario Brothers Wonder. They're doing a new art style for this Super Mario Brothers. They didn't just do 3D models like they did with the rest of the new Super Mario Brothers games. They did like a weird semi-cartoony kind of look that works for the Super Mario Brothers. So it's different enough to stay in the running for this category. It's not just more Mario, which I like. This image doesn't really show what I'm talking about. You really have to see like in-game gameplay, kind of see like the weird kind of like not quite cartoony but not quite gamey kind of look, but it's a good look. It's good art. And all the new enemies, all the brand new worlds and brand new designs go a long way for this game. I think it's pretty good. And then The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, I mean, it looks like Breath of the Wild. It looks better than Breath of the Wild, but I mean in terms of art direction, it's more Breath of the Wild in terms of like the iconography and the setting and the colors and the the overall look of the game. Like it looks better, but the art direction pretty similar. It's taking place in the same kingdom, same timeline, so it makes sense for it to look kind of similar. So I don't think it deserves it for this particular year. So my vote is going towards Hi-Fi Rush. I think even if I didn't love that game, I think what they pull off with the look of it, in terms of like, not it is not anime. Like it is anime styled without being like diet. It's hard to explain. There's so many times when Western things try to have an anime look and they don't do it right. And I think Hi-Fi Rush does it exactly right. It takes from anime the best parts of anime, like the effects and the bombastic colors and the strong personalities, but it's still you can look at it and still feel that it is Western made. Like it is styled anime, but it's not just anime, which works in its favor. It is like in that perfect in between where it's like the best of like Western mentality and the best of like Eastern mentality and techniques to do something in the middle that's on top of that, not like 2D, but it's actually like 3D models. The look of it and the art of it from beginning to end, and the setting is all brand new, 100% original, never seen before. Like a technological robot campus that is from top to bottom, not doing anything that anybody's seen before, versus Liza P, which is doing robots, puppetry, but it's taking that concept and making it Bloodborne-y, whereas this one is doing that concept and doing it from the ground up, brand new. Anyway, you get it. Hi-Fi Rush. Prediction, probably Alan Wake 2. Recency bias, and it's one of the things that people just can look at it and tell this is special. Is like if you watch like gameplay and see some cutscenes, the art direction is what stands out about Alan Wake in this overall category, and I think the popularity contest is going to get it. I wouldn't be surprised if Hi-Fi Rush manages to take this category, surprisingly, but my prediction is going to be Alan Wake 2. Almost done. Best narrative, which means best story. This may be the year where I'm the least able to engage with this category than ever. I have not finished any of these story-heavy games except for Spider-Man. And I don't think Spider-Man has the best story out of all of these, although I've heard negatives on these two's story. You already know how I feel about Alan Wake 2 in general. I dropped it. The story was not enough to keep me going, which is enough for me not to vote for it. And then I don't feel like you know how I feel about this stuff already. We're gonna cut this a little bit. We're getting down to it. I don't want this to go longer than 2 hours. Baldur's Gate is gonna get my vote. I've heard too many good things about Baldur's Gate 3's story, even though I know I've heard the third act of Baldur's Gate 3 is its weakest. I've heard that from everyone, including story reasons, and the way the story wraps up is not the strongest part of the story. But that said, just like how malleable and how much the story can change based on your choices, or at least not so much in the end game, but at least how it feels your influence on the world is so strong and varied in the beginning to middle part of that game is already enough for me to like give it the thumbs up for best narrative, just because of how amazing it is what they pulled off in terms of just how many different things can happen and how many different ways they can happen and how many different ways they accounted for it to happen. All super amazing. The web of relationships in terms of like the way one quest ends and what that means for another quest, all that stuff, super amazing. So I'm almost rewarding it almost more for narrative design. Yeah, I've heard about the third act. Yeah, says somebody in chat. I'm almost rewarding it more for like pulling off the gameplay stuff with its story versus how well the story is written or told, or even the quality of the story, which is not super fair, but At least I'm not just defaulting to Spider-Man 2 because that's the only one that I actually like played through. I do think Spider-Man 2 has a great story, but I don't even know if I feel like its story this time around is as good as the story in the first one. Um, but I do think it's still really good. But also, I mean, like Final Fantasy is a goddamn JRPG at the end of the day, and the story in that is always going to be like very. Although this time they went very heavy on making it feel like Game of Thrones, which for better or worse, some people are into that, some people aren't. Some people, I heard a lot that it felt like Game of Thrones, but it didn't reach it. Like it was trying to be Game of Thrones, and it wasn't as good, is what I'm generally hearing about Final Fantasy's story. And then Alan Wake, you know how I feel about Alan Wake. And I also heard, even on top of that, the ending it doesn't end super strong. It ends a little bit too ambiguously for some people. So some of its mysteries stay mysteries just because it's never really clear about some parts of its story. And Cyberpunk, I've heard nothing about its story other than it's fine, or I've just been hearing about the whole game updated and stuff like that. I haven't heard anything specific to Phantom Liberty other than I know people like it, but I don't know if, and some people consider it like it as a better chunk of the game than the original game even, but I don't know how much the story plays into that, so I'm not gonna. Prediction, probably Alan Wake 2 because people are dumb. Well, actually, I mean, I think Baldur's Gate is actually, my prediction is also Baldur's Gate is going to take this. I've been trying to pick something else besides the thing I voted for because usually my vote doesn't match up, but I think Baldur's Gate pretty handily is going to take this as well. We're doing it. Best game direction. This is a weird category. Awarded for outstanding creative vision and innovation in game direction and design. This is a weird category. It's so hard to describe what direction even means in this context. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. I'm not going to try to explain why it's so hard to explain this. I've talked a lot already, and it honestly doesn't matter. I'm going to give it to... I haven't voted for Zelda. I'm going to give it to Zelda. Partially because I do think that Zelda deserves to win something, even though it's not something I'm excited to play, but I probably will end up playing it sometime in the next year. What they did do... What they're doing with the Zelda formula, which is usually untouched, sacred ground, they are just going in. They're going onto sacred ground with like a bulldozer and just putting up weird shit and seeing what works. And all of the building mechanics and stuff in The Legend of Zelda that they did this year is really cool, exciting. I appreciate it. It just isn't something that I want to engage with or I'm that excited to engage with. But I do think that is a result of good direction. Being able to stick with an idea and know how to make that work in a series that is normally known for being steady and predictable. I think the winner, my prediction for winner is going to go to Baldur's Gate 3 as like an easy, probably, but otherwise it may be Alan Wake 2, honestly. Because I think some people may see the category as best overall. I think some people are going to treat it as best overall presentation, which is a little bit a combination of graphics and art design and audio and like all of that coming together along with gameplay. So almost best game of the year, but not. I have a vibe that I can't really explain for what the difference between best overall game of the year and best game direction means. I have a feeling on that, and my feeling is telling me prediction is Alan Wake 2 might take it. If not, then probably Baldur's Gate 3 because popularity, everybody loves it. Oh my god. Goo goo gaga. Oh, Game of the Year. Why do we have... Wait. Why are we already at Game of the Year and I've only cast 29 out of 31 votes? I should be at... Okay, no. This will be my 30th because I skipped one category. That's why my numbers started getting off. Okay. Well, here we are at the end. Game of the Year. You know what this means. I already know all the nominees, but I'll read them out for you guys. Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Marvel Spider-Man 2, Resident Evil 4 Remake, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. These are the 6 nominees for Game of the Year. I've talked about all of these pretty extensively for other categories, so you can kind of like take a combination of everything I've said for my feelings on all of these. I'll try to fill in some blanks um, and work my way up to what I'm going to vote on because I don't have a strong out of the gate pick, but I have some leanings. Alan Wake. Let's start with the one I didn't even touch. Never touched Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, so I'm obviously not going to vote for it. I still respect it. I think it has a right to be nominated. I honestly hope it doesn't win just off of like name recognition and the fact that it's like I don't know. I feel like come on, man. It's not different enough from Breath of the Wild for me to be that. It's weird. Either way, I'm not voting for it. Alan Wake 2 is the next up from there because I did play a good chunk of Alan Wake 2, but I also dropped it. Gameplay wasn't there enough for me. The puzzle solving and the puzzle mechanics weren't as. They were more presentation and pizzazz than they were actual, like, good game design and interesting gameplay and interesting puzzles. It's more just like bells and whistles and gimmickry to me. So I'm not voting for Alan Wake 2. Like I said, Marvel Spider-Man 2 came out better than I expected it to, but I still think it's a little bit derivative of earlier Spider-Man games. So much so that even with the new stuff on top, I don't really feel like it deserves to win in a year with a lot more surprises and a lot more risks being taken. But I'm not knocking it off. But that is definitely the next one down on my list out of here so far. But we might be getting into like the part of the list where like things are sitting next to each other and I have to pick one to go on top. But my leaning is I don't think Spider-Man 2 is going to take it from me. Baldur's Gate 3 I played a decent chunk of. I have the most respect for it out of this list in terms of what it accomplished as a game. That's easy to say, but it's not a game for me. Or at least maybe it will be. I don't know. It just takes so much energy out of me to play it in a way that I'm not looking for. But I respect it, and I know it's really impressive what they did. We'll come back to it, but I don't think it's going to get my vote. I really like the Resident Evil 4 remake a lot. They really had a lot to prove in order for me to like it at all, and in fact, I like it a lot. It's almost hard to believe that it came out this year, in such a year of like other heavy games. I mean, I already know what a lot of the games that I'm going to have in my top 10 list are not nominated on here. I don't think. I don't know. I really don't know. There's so many good games that came out this year, but I mean, like Street Fighter 6 is going to be on my top 10, and I would have had it on the nomination list, but I also wouldn't have expected it to win. But that's like an example of like I have a lot of games that I feel more strongly about that are not represented here. Resident Evil 4 is probably the one on my list that is the game on this list that is highest on my top 10 is probably Resident Evil 4. Oops, I have a keyboard over there. They just had so much they had to do to prove to me that that game could be remade and it not be a waste of time, and they did it. But then again, on the flip side, Super Mario Bros. Wonder had to make me care about a Super Mario Bros. Game. I respect the Mario games. I know that they are all pretty good. I hear that almost every time, or there's every couple of 2D Marios come out, and people are like, "Oh, this is really fucking good Mario," and I'm like, "Yeah, but I don't need good Mario right now. Like, I get it. I can guess what you mean by that." But I heard enough about Wonder. I heard enough from people who absolutely love every single Mario game, and them coming out and being like, Super Mario Bros. Wonder is the best Super Mario Bros. Game, period. At least out of the 2D Marios, including Super Mario Bros. 3 and Super Mario Bros. World, or Super Mario World. I heard that from people where that's saying some big ass shit. So that made me play that game, and I played all the way through it. I haven't finished a Mario game since Super Mario Odyssey, and I definitely haven't finished like hardly any 2D Super Mario games. But I had a blast the whole time. It was a super fun game. So that was a surprise, and for me in a different way than Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 4 had something to prove. Super Mario Bros. Wonder came out of nowhere for me. I didn't expect to care about Super Mario Bros. At all. I was gonna just like in the same way that I respect Zelda, but I skipped Zelda. I was gonna respect Mario, but skip Mario. But I played it, and I'm happy I did. I don't think I would get that from Zelda. I think I'm going to end up playing Zelda just so I can have a more educated opinion and be able to talk about it a little bit more directly. But I don't think I'm going to get any more excited about Zelda from playing it that I did from playing Wonder. So after saying all that, I kind of have my vote. I'm going to give it to Resident Evil as my game of the year. I don't think it's going to win. Resident Evil's definitely not going to win. It was kind of between these two for me. And usually I almost always give the nod to what's doing stuff that's new, and that's everything that's exciting about Super Mario Brothers Wonder is all the shit that it's doing new for Mario. Without getting into like the details, because you have to like watch videos and get an idea for what that means. And it's not even like a spoiler thing. It's just like I don't want to go into an explanation of what makes Wonder different. But Resident Evil 4 means so much to me. Resident Evil 4 Original is one of my favorite games of all time. So to bring it back out and make it a new experience for me again, but take into account that I am somebody who played the first one over and over again and know everything about that game, and you change the remake in specific ways that I will understand and appreciate and have fun with, and you play with my expectations, and you do that in a very well executed way, that takes so much understanding, design, and it looks amazing. It's a fantastic looking game. It wasn't on the art direction list, and I get it, but man, it's a really great looking game. Play is super great. Replay value through the roof. It's one of the I 100% of that game. I got all the trophies on it. My game of the year off of this list. But the real final boss of this is my prediction for what's going to win game of the year. It's a tough race. I'm leaning towards, as like I've said this whole time, Baldur's Gate 3 is probably my strongest. I give like a 30% chance to Baldur's Gate 3. No, I'll pop that up. 50% chance it's Baldur's Gate 3. 25% chance that it's Tears of the Kingdom. No. 50%? 30%? 20%? Is what I'm leaning towards. And that's coming from the vibe I'm getting off of like the sites I go to and general audience excitement and hype. Alan Wake is getting a lot of that right now. And I think if Alan Wake 2 had come out in the summertime instead of come out like a month or two before the actual awards, I think Alan Wake 2 wouldn't be getting nearly as much hype and excitement as it hit. It is definitely benefiting from the fact that there's a lot of people who have not finished Alan Wake 2 who are thinking that Alan Wake 2 is their game of the year without finishing it. That's not a super negative thing to say. That's not against Alan Wake 2. I don't think that Alan Wake 2 is that much worse once you finish it or anything, but I do think that people were blown away by its early presentation in a way that I think a lot of them are going to cool down on over time. So if it had come out a couple of months earlier, I think it wouldn't be in the running nearly as much, but I'm just going off of my perception of like the hype around it. So 20%, 30%, because Zelda is, you can never count Zelda out. Mario games never make game of the year unless they're big, different looking Mario games, and this is a very similar looking 2D Mario game. That's just the way the voting works. Spider-Man 2 is a very good sequel to a very good game, but it's a very samey sequel. It's one of the best versions of a sequel that could have happened in this context, but it is still very samey. If you're not way into those games, the differences aren't enough to blow your socks off. Not going to be game of the year. Resident Evil 4, I like it a lot. I don't think it came out super early in the year, so people have already kind of like cooled down on it. And it's a remake of a game that's already really good, so it's a little bit less impressive that it is also good. And it's not doing new stuff. It's just doing, or at least the new stuff that it does not stand out as much as doing the old stuff surprisingly well. I don't think it's going to get enough love to get Game of the Year in general. Really comes, so I think Baldur's Gate runs away with the entire year. I think people want to support the fact that Baldur's Gate is made by is a genre that people thought was dead, and is one of the best-selling games of the year. Came out of nowhere nearly, like barely had any kind of marketing. People weren't really aware of it. Baldur's Gate, the name has a lot of prestige behind it, but it's still like the studio that's behind it is like still like independent-ish. Um, it's been bubbling in the background, and people were like, "Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to the next Baldur's Gate." For the people who already liked older Baldur's Gate games, but then it came out, and then it spread like wildfire about how much better it is than people were expecting. Blah blah blah. I think it's mostly a hype thing. My overall prediction for Game of the Year is Baldur's Gate 3. Next guess would be Zelda, because it's almost entirely because it's Zelda. Zelda can win on name alone. As long as you're not a bad Zelda game, you're in the running for Game of the Year if you're like a big 3D Zelda. If you're a 2D Zelda, fuck no. Get the fuck out of here. You cannot be a 2D ass Zelda and expect to be Game of the Year, because people don't like 2D. I don't know if that counts for Link to the Past, like the remake of Link to the Past, which was like technically 2D gameplay but like 3D graphics. I don't know how well it did this year, but I don't think it was anybody's Game of the Year either. Point is, 30% chance next, and then 20% chance unless people come to their senses before voting time and realize that Alan Wake 2 is a very, very good game in some aspects, but it has issues that should not let it run away with this category. But nominating it is reasonable, is what I will say. All right, I've talked enough. That's how I feel about it. Thanks for watching. If you stuck around the whole time, impressive. If you come in and come out, fun, great. That's fine. My game of the year, as far as this list, is Resident Evil 4. I'm not going to go all the way through the rest of all my choices because nobody cares that much. Thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for being here with me while I make all these decisions. Now I can go out and talk about it with other people and be all like, well, I know what I voted for in all these, and I'm going to have this recording just like I do every other year. It's always a good time. Gives me things to do at a time of year when things are like winding down. I'm not playing games as often. I'm watching more stuff. People are busy, holiday parties left and right, so I have less people to hang out with. This is a good time for me, even if a lot of it's just me talking to myself and or one other person. So, thanks for watching. My top 10 list of the year, I'm going to announce the dates for those weeks ahead of time. I may do some random streams this month too, because this month is just going to be cold and slow. But in general, it's either the last week of the year or one of the first few weeks of next year that I do my top 10 list. I'll keep everybody informed on my Facebook as always, so look forward to that. And I think that's it. So thanks for watching. I appreciate you guys a lot. Hope to see you guys in the next one soon. Later.